Dr. Paul Johnson, to my knowledge, has been doing Bigfoot UFO investigations in the state of Ohio, state of Pennsylvania. That's a good, by the way. State of Pennsylvania since at least 1985, and probably a lot sooner than that. I just don't know the exact number, the exact year offhand. But I've known him since June of 1986 when I wrote to him and ordered a copy of his book, The Pennsylvania Bigfoot. And I learned a bit through Connie Cameron's newsletter, The Bigfoot Co-op. That was in June of '86. I don't recall the exact time that I met him the first time. I believe it was in Western PA, or Eastern Ohio, that'd be, yes. But Dr. Paul Johnson has been kind enough to come over here on an annual basis. I believe last year I said it was since 1990. I think it was 92. But either way, it's been for at least 5 years running. And you know, we're very happy to have him over here every year. That's why we renamed the name of this organization in September of 1995 to the Tri-State Bigfoot Study Group, because I want to try and cover geographically a larger area, not just Eastern Ohio, but Eastern Ohio, Western PA, and Panhandle of West Virginia. Dr. Paul has a lot of material that he will be telling you about. He is a wealth of information, and you can learn a lot about what he has to say if you listen to what he has to say. So, without further ado, I will present to you Paul Johnson from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
As usual, I bring handouts. I hope I have enough for you. As Don mentioned, I've been public since 1992, this organization. And the first few years I talked about some of the typical Bigfoot sightings we have in the state of Pennsylvania. Last year, if you were here, remember I handed out something very similar to that, except it dealt with Bigfoot sightings. And look something like this. In fact, there are some copies over there. We'll pick them up a little later. What I thought I'd do tonight is talk a little bit about UFOs and maybe try to relate the two. Someone came up to me before the meeting and asked me if I thought that Bigfoot came from UFOs, and I always get that question. Don mentioned he started his Bigfoot organization in 1985. In Pennsylvania, it's a little different. The people who investigate Bigfoot in Pennsylvania actually started out as UFO investigators. Actually still are. I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Center for UFO Research. I'm the state director of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, the Pennsylvania state director of that international organization. I became interested in UFOs in 1952. I was about 10 years old. I started investigating in 1968, and been with some type of an organization for the last 20 or 25 years studying UFOs. The way I got involved in Bigfoot is when I started studying UFOs in the mid-1970s, I began to get reports, people would call me, and report Bigfoot sightings. It never occurred to me before 1975 that there was Bigfoot in Pennsylvania or in Ohio. Back in 1958, I saw a movie, The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas. So I knew there were Bigfoot reports from the Himalayas and from the Pacific Northwest, but it never occurred to me that Bigfoot would be in Pennsylvania. So I began to laugh at them. Call someone else at first. But I started getting a lot of these reports. And when I began to study them, I found that the properties are very similar. The properties between UFO reports and Bigfoot reports are similar. For example, if you look at the first page of the handout I gave you, you'll notice that I began in 1945 through 1995. I listed the number of UFOs reported in Pennsylvania. Now you need to understand that about 90% of the UFO reports that we receive can be explained. People are simply misidentifying all aircraft, dirigibles, the planet Venus, and so on. What you see there on the first page of your paper is the residue that remains after I removed all of that from my UFO reporting files. So in other words, if you look at 1973, there were 36 UFOs. I received 360 phone calls. See, 90% I explained away. That's what remains, about 36 that I could not explain. The first thing you'll notice is that there aren't UFO sightings in Pennsylvania before 1947. At least I can't. I found one report from 1898. And if you go back and through the Pittsburgh Press and the Pennsylvania newspapers, 1940s, you don't find any reports of flying saucers or UFOs. It began just about the time that it began across the rest of the United States, about 1947. The first Bigfoot report I received was 1948. So I don't have any Bigfoot reports before 1947 either. So I thought that unusual. Bigfoot and UFOs sort of have the same properties. They both began around the same time. If you look, for example, down that list, you'll notice that UFOs occur in what we call flat periods. There's an increase in UFO activity, increase, decrease. Bigfoot does the same thing. For example, if you look from 1985, it goes from 6 to 16 to 19 to 21. It peaks in 1988. 21 UFO reports. I have the same peak occurring with Bigfoot reports. It begins 1985, 86, 87, increases, peaks in 1998, drops off again. Now the peaks don't always correlate. Sometimes there's a UFO flap and there is no Bigfoot flap. It doesn't always correlate. It correlated in 1973. If you remember 1973, there's a major UFO flap across the United States, the eastern part of the United States. I had 36 reports from Pennsylvania. And although I was not living in Pennsylvania at the time, there was an investigator here. His name is Stan Gordon. And it turns out that 1975 was the largest. It was a year where the largest number of Bigfoot were reported in the state of Pennsylvania. Over 100 sightings of the creature in 1973. Probably 80% of all the reports we have occurred in the 1970s, for whatever reason. So there are similarities between Bigfoot and UFOs. One dissimilarity is the fact that 90% of all the UFO reports I get can be explained. The opposite is true for Bigfoot. 90% of the Bigfoot reports I receive, I can't explain. Excuse me. I have tracks and so on. I can't explain any of those. It's only 10% that I can't. And that's usually due to the fact that they're hoaxes more than misidentifications. If you turn to the next page. Yeah. Oh, I gave you the wrong one. Sorry. What I did was, I took all my UFO reports and I broke them down by counting. In fact, if you were here last year, I did the same thing with Bigfoot reports. Just broke them down by county. One of the reasons I did that is, well, I didn't know what I was going to find. I'm a scientist. I'm looking for an answer to this UFO phenomenon. So I'm looking for trends. So I put those numbers in there. The first thing you'll notice is that, well, all the UFO sightings occur in western Pennsylvania. And almost none in eastern Pennsylvania. Well, that's probably not true. The problem is that I live in western Pennsylvania. So everyone knows that if you have a UFO sighting in western Pennsylvania, you call my 800 number. I have an 800 number with every police station in western Pennsylvania. So those numbers probably more or less reflect the fact that I'm located in western Pennsylvania. I live in Allegheny County. There's 108 UFO reports in Allegheny County. It's unlikely that there are any more UFO reports in Allegheny County than Philadelphia County, except that people in Philadelphia don't have anybody to call. There are no UFO investigators in the eastern part of the state. They have local organizations that do a lot of public relations. If you look up north, you'll notice McKean County, 25 reports. Turns out the assistant director of my organization lives in McKean County. All of a sudden, it looks like there's a large number of sightings in McKean County. No, it's just that people up there know who to call when they see it. This is a witness-oriented phenomenon, just like UFO, or just like Bigfoot. Bigfoot is witness-oriented. I don't study Bigfoot, I don't study UFOs, I study Bigfoot reports and UFO reports. And the reason is that I can't catch a UFO and I can't catch a Bigfoot. I can't go out and look at a UFO and study it. I can't go out and look at a Bigfoot and study it. So I'm stuck with the only being able to study the reports. The only thing that's switched with respect to Bigfoot is you'll notice that in Allegheny County there's 108 UFO sightings, in Westmoreland County there's 72. With Bigfoot it's flip-flop. There's 151 Bigfoot reports from Westmoreland County and 31 from Allegheny County. So when I put the Bigfoot sightings on the map, which I handed out the last time I spoke here, it's likely that more accurately represents the fact that there's more Bigfoots in Westmoreland County than there are in Allegheny County. That's not true of UFOs. But it turns out that Westmoreland County is a lot more heavily forested, heavily wooded. There's two major ridges that run north-south through Westmoreland County, Chestnut Ridge and Laurel Ridge. There's simply more places for Bigfoot to seclude itself in Westmoreland County than Allegheny County, which has its Pittsburgh there.
Doesn't it correlate that there's a lot of UFO sightings in Allegheny County because of Pittsburgh's airport being there also?
Probably.
600.
And also the population density. What you're seeing with UFO reports, and even with Bigfoot reports, is population density. There are more people in Allegheny County to see and report UFOs than there are in Westmoreland. A few statistics on UFOs that really don't jive with Bigfoot. If you go to the next page, I have 538 UFO reports. I don't always know when they report a UFO, they may not remember exactly when they saw it, the date and time. But what I did was, whenever I did know what day it was sighted, I plotted the number of unknowns versus the day of the week. Now, when I did that, I really expected to see when would you expect UFOs to peak? On weekends, right? More people are outside doing things, not working. I would expect sightings to peak on Saturday because it's a witness-oriented phenomenon. It doesn't. It peaks in the middle of the week. And this is consistent for 30 years. Next year, if I get 6 UFO reports, 4 4 or 5 or 6 will be on Wednesday or Thursday, not on the weekends. Now, Bigfoot reports do peak on weekends. I don't have the frequency and the day and week for the Bigfoot reports, but they do peak on Saturday rather than in the middle of the week. That middle of the week phenomenon for UFOs has actually been observed by other organizations. We've done statistical analysis, and we don't know why. We don't know what UFOs are. We don't know why they have a tendency to be seen and reported in the middle of the week rather than on the weekends. On the next page, I plotted my number of, again, I'm looking at UFOs versus the month of the year. And again, what I expected was, of course, I didn't think about that deeply, but I thought, well, I would expect an increase in the summertime. My peak would be in the summertime. More people are outdoors. More people are out doing things, recreating. It's more likely, since it's a witness-oriented phenomenon, that July and August would be my peak months. You notice that's not true. It's October, November, and next comes March. But if you think about it a little more deeply, UFOs are a nocturnal phenomenon. During the summer, it's daylight most of the time when you're outside. If you try to figure out what would be the best case scenario, would be months in which it was dark but not too cold. What do you come up with? March and October. Okay. It gets dark about 7 o'clock, but it's still not too cold that you're not going to be outside. And since it's a witness-oriented phenomena, maybe it makes sense that UFO reports peak in March and October. You're more likely to look at the sky. But Bigfoot's not in the sky. Bigfoot's on the ground. Bigfoot sightings peak in August, July and August. It's a summer phenomenon. So this data tends to suggest that there's no correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs. If Bigfoot's coming down, and if UFOs are coming down and putting Bigfoot on the ground, then I should have more Bigfoot sightings in October and March, because that's when UFOs are around. And Bigfoot should be running around on Wednesday night, right? Because that's when the UFOs are here. And it's a trip.
Got to give time to travel. You know, if you got to get to one county to another, if you have a drop off in one county and then pick up in the other.
Paul, like in October and November, where it's the highest, amounts of reports, do you think that's also due to the possibilities, and especially Pennsylvania is so famous for their fall foliage? We have so many people going outside to admire the foliage of the, especially even taking pictures late in the evening, things like this. We have more people looking up, for one thing.
The problem is that 90% of the UFO reports are nocturnal. So it's unlikely people are out looking at foliage after dark.
Yeah, that's true.
So, again, UFO sightings aren't witness-oriented. It's the lights from the object that are attracting the attention of the witness. And so it has to be dark most of the time. And the maximum amount of darkness, of course, is December and January, but everyone's inside in December and January. So I figured that March, April, October, maybe early November, that those statistics seem reasonable. I can't explain the day statistics, why the UFO sightings peak on Wednesday rather than on the weekend when more people are out there.
What's the most recent UFO sighting you have investigated as far as spectacular?
We haven't had haven't had a UFO sighting that I would call spectacular, at least not since the 1970s. The most spectacular occurred on March 1st, 1979, right at the end of the decade. Most of our best sightings did occur in the 1970s. And a craft the size of Three River Stadium, which is the baseball football stadium in Pittsburgh. Most people estimated that that was about the size of this object. And it was in the skies over downtown Pittsburgh for about 2 to 3 hours. It was observed by hundreds of witnesses. And it took me several months, but I ultimately investigated and talked to most of those witnesses. And I have no reasonable explanation for that. That looked like a giant chandelier in the sky as the way most people describe it. Haven't had many UFO reports. Haven't had a Bigfoot report where actually the creature was sighted I'd say for about 2 years. I did receive a phone call several days ago from a man who lives in Indiana County, young man about 28 years old, lives in a trailer park, which for some reason is very attractive to Bigfoot. We have a large number of Bigfoot reports in and around trailer parks in Westmoreland County. It's been that way for about 20 years. So tornadoes aren't the only thing that pick on trailer parks. So
You think maybe it's the children that he's observing as well?
well, there's a lot of theories. One is that all the human activity is on one floor, the first floor. So it's easy to walk around and peer in the windows and see what's going on. They tend to be younger people who live in the trailers with lots of kids, and that might be what's attracting them. These people have only lived there for 2 years, and for the last several months, around 2 o'clock in the morning, they've been hearing this very loud, they thought it was a bird, a chirping type sound. And I've heard that reported with respect to the creature before, but I wouldn't have piqued my curiosity. Apparently, it woke them up. It was that loud. And so one night, about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, they went outside and walked behind their trailer. And there's another house behind their trailer. And behind that house, nothing but woods. They didn't take a flashlight. They thought it was a bird. So they start walking, and they get to the edge of the neighbor's lawn. There's hedges there. And all of a sudden, they hear footsteps. And this bird is approaching them, but it's walking. And it's walking, they thought, on 2 legs. And then they said, it has asthma. I can hear it breathing, and gurgling, and growling. And so they ran. They ran back to the house. And they didn't have a flashlight. But they had a flashlight with the battery dead. So they called me. And another Bigfoot investigator, his name's Walt France, also had some sightings. He and I went out on Thursday night. It's a Saturday, just previous Thursday night, to talk to these people. And I gave them a tape recorder. And I asked them to tape record the sound for me so I can at least hear what it sounds like, maybe have it analyzed. They didn't see anything. They thought it was behind hedges, and I went up, and they thought that it was above the hedges. Now the hedges, I'm 6'5", and the hedges were about, well, I think up to here. And they thought this chirping sound was about at the height of the hedges. And it had been walking, they could hear it walking towards them. That's essentially where that sighting stands now. And I guess I also point out another very unusual aspect of sightings in western Pennsylvania. They occur very close to cities and towns. Our Bigfoot sightings don't occur out in the middle of nowhere. This creature was observed 3 miles from Indiana State University. There was 15,000 students. The trailer is actually within the city limits of Indiana, which has a population of about 30,000. Now, indeed, once you get out of that town, there's lots and lots of woods for this thing to be in, no doubt about that. But there's a tendency for the creature in Pennsylvania to come down into the towns and into the cities. It's been observed walking down the sidewalk. A town called Latrobe, Pennsylvania, back in the 1970s. It's walking down the sidewalk. And so it's not always, not even very often observed out in the woods, which may seem reasonable because there aren't a lot of people in the woods. But seldom do I ever get a report from a hunter who's out hunting deer. Very seldom do I get a sighting during deer season. And there are 1 million hunters in Pennsylvania who go out hunting deer, and I may get 1 report every 3 years from a hunter who even sees a track. Yes?
These numbers that you have down here for Bigfoot
Yeah.
reports, like Westmoreland, for example, 151.
Mm-hmm.
Are these all different sightings, different dates?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's a Bigfoot and 60 people report, I seen that
No,
Bigfoot that day.
no,
and
you're
that
looking
time.
at
These are
actual different reports. Now, there may be 6 of those 151 that occurred within 2 days of one another, 3 days at one particular point in time. But no, those are
It's not the same incident.
those are not, yeah, those incidents, they're not witnesses. It's not 151 witnesses, it's 151 incidents. Yeah.
We had our sighting in Westmoreland, in your county, in
Sighting of,
a Bigfoot
okay.
in 1994, along your, we did not report it. We both felt that we were totally nuts until we actually came here. At least I really. I mean, I've also experienced a UFO, so people are really going to think, 1965 was my UFO experience, and then in 1994 I had a Bigfoot experience.
Well, needless to say, I need to talk to you a little later, but why don't you, where did this happen at?
This was in Westmoreland County. We were along a freeway, and we had pulled off to eat.
Road 30 or
No,
Turnpike?
it was Turnpike, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah, it was the exit, whatever is between Pittsburgh and Somerset. There was a couple exits there in between. It was in the Chestnut Ridge area, not that far from Woods Road. And it was in October.
Can it cross the highway?
No.
We were
Okay.
picnicking at the bottom of a mountain, a large hill, and it charged.
And you were still on the Turnpike though?
Near it, within a couple miles.
So
We were out of the car, we were picnicking when it came down.
But you still had your toll ticket. You were still on the Turnpike
We were
drive.
still, no, we pulled off. There was a place to pull off.
So on the Turnpike.
On the
Rest.
Turnpike. And that's what we did. We pulled off to eat. And that's what at a site that has a picnic table.
Right, there's lots of,
Yeah.
Well, we did not officially report it, so I have a question, is it possible to still do so at this time?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
That's exactly what it was.
David?
You're going to be,
You seen it charged down with an electric?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we saw it.
you're going to be my sighting number 325 or whatever. Yes.
Last Sunday, myself and 3 other people were traveling in a van on Pennsylvania State Route 219, I believe, going north into Johnstown.
Okay.
Are you very familiar with that?
I know where it's at, yeah.
Okay. We had the windows closed and the air conditioning on in the van, and I think roughly about 5 or 6 miles out of Johnstown, we noticed a very foul, sulfuric type bad odor in that spot. And it was going up, it was a heavily wooded part of the state route there. There was no towns that, no exits or nothing. And we did not notice like no plants or no visible signs of what would be causing it.
That's north of Johnstown.
South of Johnstown. And I was
So
kind of wondering
between
if you,
Somerset and Johnstown.
yeah, if you've ever had anybody call you about it, or any kind of like sightings close to that area.
Never had any Bigfoot sightings from that area. I have an investigator who lives in Johnstown, had a Bigfoot sighting, and travels 219 quite a bit because he has a delivery business, so he's in and around that area. Interested in Bigfoot, investigates for me, and has never mentioned anything to me about it.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is my personal experiences in the state of Ohio here. Two of the three experiences that I've noticed this very strong, pungent or foul smelling, rotten egg type of smell. And I just kind of had that in the back of my mind, as we were traveling through this area, western Pennsylvania. The people I was with, they don't really believe in this, in the existence of Bigfoot and, the accompanying, characteristics such as, smells or what have you. So I didn't let on at the time, like, could it be or couldn't it be? When I found out that you were, speaking tonight, that's why I wanted to, ask you about it.
Overall, there's been odors are reported in less than 10% of my cases, but that's probably because the creature isn't close enough to the witness most of the time in order for the witness to notice any type of odor. Now, interestingly, the possible sighting I just talked about from Indiana, on other evenings when those people were sitting on their porch in the trailer park, they noticed the type of odor that you're referring to. So occasionally we do get the report of rotting flesh type odor, fishy odor, rotten egg type odors with respect to this creature. But I've never had any reports, any Bigfoot. I mean, I'm fairly familiar with that area south, 219 south of Johnstown. But I'll mention it to my investigator because he drives
very
up.
noticeable. Even on the way back down through.
How far south of Johnstown were you?
I'm thinking it's about 5 to 10 miles south of Johnstown, going back down towards Somerset. When we were coming back through that area about 6:30 last Monday morning, that smell was still very noticeable. I mean,
Yeah, and they're,
Sewer problems.
Yeah.
yeah,
no, I'm just not, familiar with that area, and it's like, whenever I know stuff that strong, it kind of makes me set off something in the back of my head about it.
well,
I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in a city called Westlake. It's very here. It's probably that Westlake probably could beat the whole southeastern section of the state in a war. There's so many people there. There's one road called Columbia Road, Route 252, between Hilliard Road and Lorraine Road. If you drive down to it at night, it always has the sulfur smell in the air. It has something to do with the sewers. I don't know why. It's only at night, but you drive down and you smell this, and it's constantly. And everyone always calls it like Stinky Lane or something like that.
Sasquatch Lake.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
When you investigated in '79, you talked to all of the people, and you said it took several months, did you get the feeling that you talked to all these different people that they all had seen about the same thing? Or
Well, yes, but you need to be careful because the way I received that report was that they called the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette first. And so there's a big article in the Post-Gazette. Now, the Post-Gazette reporter goes out with an artist, and the artist draws what the witnesses described and puts the picture in the newspaper the next day. So everyone's seen what this thing is supposed to look like. So the answer to your question, yes, I got the same description. Hopefully it's because that's actually what they saw and they weren't affected by seeing the drawing in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
If it lingered around that long, how come someone didn't take a picture?
Well, it was at night, and video cameras weren't all that predominant back in '79. They were still very heavy and expensive. I'm not aware of anyone even attempting to take a picture. The witnesses were mainly people driving in and around the area. There were doctors, lawyers, nurses, steel workers. They still, make steel in Pittsburgh anymore, but they used to. Lots of steel workers. But a dozen of them were steel workers who were outside on the lunch break, night shift on the lunch break. No one had a camera with them as far as I know. Good job.
The sighting where you said about, it sounded like a bird chirping, is that common?
Not common, but it's been reported. The most common sound is the high-pitched scream, like a woman being strangled. Or if you're close enough, very low-pitched growling sound. Whenever the witnesses are close enough, many of them liken it to, they say it seems as if the creature has asthma. It's like it's having a hard time breathing.
That's quite common there, but
whenever the witness is within 5 or 10 feet of the creature. For example, Sam Sherry. You met Sam. He came up and...
No, I never met.
Oh, okay. Touched him on... he was right next to him. And he could hear it wheezing and having a very difficult...
Do you have any ideas what that might be from? Why? Any idea at all?
No. Depends who you ask. If you ask the person who thinks that Bigfoot comes from UFOs, they're going to say, well, you're having a hard time breathing the air in our environment. If you talk to a person who thinks that Bigfoot spends most of his time underground in coal mines, again, it's got black lung. It's got lung problems because it spends most of its time underground.
Or it's just a heavy breather.
What's that?
Or it's just a heavy breather. It's a scary monster.
Is that all the questions from everybody? Guess that's it.